So there it was, follow big brother to the Haven, and a year later, little brother went to the Haven, and there we were, all three Bush brothers playing soccer at the Haven. So, more inspiration, heck. Did I know what major I wanted to do? No. So then fast forward, right? My first year at Lock Haven, 1972-73, there were three things that I remember that inspired me. Number one, the dining hall food. Number two, starting left back on the soccer team. And number three, the co-eds, right? Dave Tomasi wasn't there that year. Dave Tomasi was up in Vermont. We had Mr. Worgan. Mr. Worgan only covered football. The student trainers took care of all the other sports. Mr. Worgan was a PT, and I didn't criticize Mr. Worgan. I let him tape my ankle once. He put on a tourniquet, and I couldn't practice, so I had to go to the student trainer and get it, how they loosen it up a little bit, 1973-4, there were four things that inspired me, right? Soccer, I was still starting. My wife, she showed up as a student that year. Dave Tomasi came to Lock Haven, and boy, did he inspire me. How about it if you've had Dave Tomasi? And athletic training, because Dave got there and said, hey, you're in health and PE teaching, but guess what? There's a new option for you people. If you're interested in athletic training, then you need to apply. So he talked with us. He said, here's what you do to apply. Then he looked at us pretty serious, and he said, you get an A, you get a B, or you get an F. And then he said, you will act professionally, you will act ethically, and if you don't, you're gone from the program. So then he lightened up a little bit like he always did, and then he'd say, you know what? You need to like athletic training like I like athletic training. He goes, athletic training is life, and if you like it, it will be your life. So that is kind of like Dave Tomasi and how he inspired you to get into athletic training, right? Someone once asked me, does Tomasi have favorites? Tomasi had favorites in every class. Just for example, right, there's two of them, right? There were good favorites and there were bad favorites. Where's Joe Spogley? Tim Foley, you heard his name. He had bad, he loved them all, right? So last thing with Dave, and I'll move on. Dave loved to tell stories, right? Dave looked at me my senior year and he goes, Bushy, and he talked like that, Bushy, you didn't get football, you got to get wrestling. So that meant I had to work wrestling with Tomasi. First night I worked wrestling, a Saturday night, I don't know what month it was, what day it was, we have Slimy Pebble in the field house. Do you know who that is? Go ahead. Who is it? Slippery Rock, they said it, right? And you had to get there an hour before the match or you didn't get in, right? And there were people all the way down to the red light trying to get in, right? It was that good. It was great wrestling. So I'm watching Dr. Larry Cox's dad, Dr. Cox, the wrestling coach. I'm watching him coach. And the first wrestling match, it's the little guys, the 120 whatever pounders, or 119 college? Yeah. They're going at it, and they're flipping each other around and all that stuff, grabbing each other, and, like I said before. And all of a sudden, we pin the slippery rack guy, and I see Dr. Cox Sr. do a flip right on the mat. I'm like, what are we doing? What's going on here, right? And so I look at Tomasi, he just smiles, he goes, yeah, it'll get better. So the match goes on, we get almost down to the heavyweight match, and Tomasi, he's watching the match, you gotta watch. He's telling me stories. All of a sudden he goes, hey, Bushy, I'm gonna tell you how to prevent from having water in a foundation in a swamp in Vermont, right? Like, what am I gonna learn here? And then he goes, yeah, you got to put a perimeter drain on the inside and a perimeter drain on the outside. Do you understand that? I'm just going, sure, yeah, I got it, right? So anyway, long night, the Haven wins by the last match, heavyweight match. Everyone's just excited. I'm just excited to get down to the house, right? Change the professionals, get something to eat, get all the way down to the basement, and maybe I can get the last adult beverage out of the keg, right? And see what's going on down there. I get downstairs, got changed. I look, and there's Tomasi. He's at the KDR house dancing with the athletic training girls, right? And he's doing stuff I've never seen before. He's doing the two-step, the Watusi, the twist. He's inventing stuff, right? And after about 25, 30 minutes, I'm getting tired watching him, right? Tomasi looks over and he goes, "Hey, Sandy, can you get me a beer?" You know, well, sure, right? You know, you got to give Tomasi a beer, right? So, just a quick thing on Tomasi. I'm telling you what, we just wish the guy was still here because we learned so much from him. We learned that athletic training is life and athletic training is fun, right? And certainly, he went too soon. Next story. How many in the room, put your hand up, know of or know Dr. Joseph Torg? Okay. Good. So I'll tell you a little bit of story about Dr. Torg. So fast forward to South Dakota. My wife and I went on our honeymoon to big Division II football at South Dakota State. 2 years we're out there. We finish. We're looking for jobs. There's no jobs out there. I'm looking for little Division III jobs. There's none available. So I apply to where? Penn Sports Medicine and Old Dominion University, right? They both accept me. They want me to come for interviews. They both offer me a position. I don't know what to do. My wife wants to go to Old Dominion. I'm thinking, you know, what do I do here? So what do? You call Tomasi. Tomas, tell me what you think. I tell him the two options. Silence, then he goes, "Roshi, if you work for Dr. Torg, you can get a job anywhere you want in the country." Well, you know, I had to go down to Penn Sports Medicine and work for Torg, right? So, what do I remember about Torg? Rennie, I think one time you and I talked about Steve Heckler when we were on the board with Steve, and we talked about this command and control, right, scale of 0 to 10. And Rennie told me that Steve was like a drill sergeant, but he's like an 8 out of 10, right? Dr. Torg was a 5-star general, right? And he was a 10 out of 10. So it was always what? My way or the highway, right? Whatever Dr. Torg said, you made sure you did, right? So I remember they trained me to put casts on. I was over at Hupp Hospital, spent 2 weeks with a nice guy. He taught me like 3 or 4 different techniques, different casts and everything. The next day back in the clinic, there's 40 patients in there, a lot of people, right? Dr. Torg comes out of the patient office, 40-year-old weekend warrior with a swollen ankle, sprained, you know. He tells me, take him down, put the cast on, put it up in dorsiflexion and eversion. I'm going to be back in about 5 minutes to check it, right, to see if you did it right. So, you know, I was all excited. I thought I was doing very nice plaster cast. I thought I could do my job, right? Go down, stick him up there, get everything ready, push the guy's foot up, little dorsiflexion eversion. I look at the guy and go, now, keep it there, right? And then I start putting on a masterpiece. How about it, Kenny? I'm molding the thing, squeezing it, putting the bottom walker on, and I'm ahead of him, right? I'm waiting for him to come out, right? So he comes out the door, walks down like he does. He's got his own style. He gets 10 feet from the cast, and he looks at it, and in the loudest voice I've ever heard, "Sonny Bush, cut the damn thing off, put it in dorsiflexion and eversion." So what do you do with that, Kenny, right? He goes in the room, you run up and get the head athletic trainer, Joe Vegzo. "Joe, I need you." Go down, I tell him the problem, right? Joe goes, "Okay, you can choose. You want to do the cast or you want to hold the foot up?" "I'll hold the foot up." He puts the cast on, I hold it up, he finishes it, right? It's about 5 minutes, door opens, here comes Torg again, right? Walks down, you know, I don't know what he's going to say. 10 feet away, he looks at it, "Sonny Bush, good job." And then he goes on into the next one, right? And then last thing on Joe. Everyone thinks he's the meanest guy in the world, right? And he could be. But I remember the first year, my wife asked me in December, the first week, we didn't make much money. We lived on the main line. "Honey, do we have any money for Christmas gifts," right? So Heather, the attorney down here had just been born. She was a couple months old, right? So I said, no, but I'll go to work and I'll see if I can get a cash advance, on my paycheck. So I asked Tina Bonsi, hey, who do you see? Where do you go? She goes, call up Mr. Schwendeman, right? Schwendy. And so I did, and he said, yeah, what do you want? I said, can you get me $300 advance for Christmas gifts? Oh yeah, come on over tomorrow at noon. I'll write out the check, I'll have it ready for you. So I go over, feel pretty good about getting the 300, right? I sit outside, his door's closed, I can tell someone's in there, I'm waiting. All of a sudden the door opens up and here comes Torg. Turns and looks right at me. What are you doing here? Like I did something wrong, right? I said, well, I'm trying to get a cash advance for Christmas for my wife. And Schwendy said to come over and get it. He turns around, goes back in, leaves the door open. Schwendeman, rip that check up. I want you to write out a check for $500 and put down at the bottom, Christmas bonus from Dr. Torg. And he did it. Dr. Torg grabbed the check. He came out the door, handed it to me. He goes, Merry Christmas to your wife, right? And then off he went. So that was Dr. Torg. And then he was right. I got any job in the country I wanted, right to Messiah College, right? Last guy, I have to tell you, this is someone who's touched me so much, inspired me so much that, I could cry. This guy, he's kind of, us old guys look at him and we go, he's not a day over 22. If he grows a beard, maybe 25, right? The young professionals look at him and go, they think he's kind of old and mature, but he's still cool, right? He goes by many nicknames. There's Wesley. Paula will call him Wesley, right? There's Wes. So around here, you guys usually call him Wes if you're talking shop or whatever. There's Wessie. So if you're inner circle like us, we're pretty tight with Wes, right? We call him Wessie. And then Steve Heckler calls him Liver Boy. Now, Liver Boy interrupted me on the golf course in the summer, which you shouldn't do because I'm working on my game and I'm just trying to get good enough to beat the next guy, right? So at the time that summer I was working on kind of trying to get down under 100 for the first time. We're out there warming up. I'm with the Ship women's soccer coach. And all of a sudden he gets a phone call. And the phone call was from someone from Ship. About the same time I'm getting a text from him. You got to pray for Wessie. He just went in the hospital and he's getting a liver transplant. Well, that kind of ruined the golf day, right? Because you're going through the motions and you're tearing up a little bit and you're talking about Wessie and what a great guy he was and everything you like about him or you don't like about him, And Wessie came through that and he recovered. It took a long time. And he showed off his nice 14-inch scar and he talked about the details of, getting sponge baths with nurses in the hospital and all that stuff. And then he talked about, this, you get surgeries, you got to wear these Depends things, right? I didn't even know what they were, right? So Wessie would tell me, there's a sports model, here's where you can get the cheap ones. We laugh, but just about 4 or 5 years ago, I had prostate surgery, and guess what? I had to wear these things, right? So then Wessie would call me, and we'd talk back and forth, and we'd make fun of each other and these things, and, got to really know Wessie. Well, then I start getting closer to Wessie, and, he'd call me up, hey, Bushman, I'm going to send you my resume. Will you review the thing? I'm going for a promotion. He'd send me this thing, and I'd read it, and the thing was like, he's not even 40 years old. It's like 7.5, 8 pages of a curriculum vitae, right? Now, Paula, I think at age 40, yours wasn't even that thick, right? So I'm starting to plot what Wessie's doing. And then he starts doing presentations to doctors and hospitals and nurses and promoting, donor stuff and, and I realized that Wessie was just